this week we had Alicia Conlin-Hurd onto the show. I actually caught up with her in person in her house in Melbourne, which was really cool. And I've known Alicia for probably a little over a year, but she's a really, really impressive and cool woman. And this is a good podcast for anybody who is looking at the following things. So, one, if you're interested in a career in marketing, especially on the agency side of things, because she worked in an agency for over 6 years, and so she's got a really good insight into what it's like to work for a marketing agency and what that lifestyle looks like. Also really good for somebody who is considering setting up their own business, because that's what she has done over the last 15 months or so, and she's made it actually quite successful. Really good for somebody who's considering working with somebody close to them. So whether that's a friend or a partner or a family member, the reason being is this business that she started and that she runs, she does that with her partner. And she has some really good ways for how they make sure that that works and that their relationship works and that their business works alongside it. And it's also a great episode for somebody who is still trying to figure out what the hell they want to do. Because she was in that position herself. She says she is still trying to figure out what she wants to do, and she has good exercises that she has done to help her design her life. One of the ones that I actually found the most helpful was she has this idea of prototyping your life. So basically you have an idea of something that you might want to do. Well, how can you prototype that? How can you go and maybe test it in a small format and see if it is something that you do enjoy? And so lots of really great practical tips like that. So I definitely recommend listening to this episode if you meet any of those criteria. But she's also just a super interesting person and an absolute gun of a businesswoman and as an entrepreneur. So it's a really, really good listen, and I hope you enjoy it. To start off, how do you describe what you do now?
So as in like what our business does?
No, like you personally.
Oh, like what do I actually do?
Yeah. Like if you were at a, I don't know, a Christmas lunch or something, your auntie is like, so what do you do?
I'd be like,
what do you say?
I've answered this 100 times. I'm not telling you again. But if she was asking for the first time, well, I run a business with my partner called Persuasion Experience. So I guess I'm a business owner. I probably don't really resonate with like entrepreneur so much, which is like a different story we can delve into. But we've been running Persuasion Experience for 15 months or so. And what do? We help B2B and tech and SaaS companies to figure out why people buy from them and then turn that into landing pages and funnels. That's the quick way of saying it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So like, do you call it an agency or?
Well, this is like the fun part, right? I hate the word agency because I think it has like a lot of really bad, nasty connotations.
I agree with that.
So we are still figuring out our positioning, but like realistically, yeah, we're like a marketing agency or a marketing consultancy that helps businesses to grow.
Okay, gotcha. But obviously, you've only been doing this for 15 months. So
Yep.
what age are you, if you don't mind me asking?
28.
Okay, so for the first 26 years and 9 months of your life, you didn't do this. So
Yeah.
well, I guess first of all, like, where did you grow up? And like, what was school like for you? Were you like a straight 180 student or were you?
Oh, like,
Yeah.
okay. So where did I grow up? For the majority of my childhood, I grew up in a town called Denali. And then this is usually where I get blank stares and people are like, cool, you should go there on your travels, actually. I'll give you some good country Vic recommendations. And so this is a tiny little town, no traffic lights, like under 800 people. Before that, we were like a bit further out in a place called Malagal. Our house burnt down. We moved into this town called Denali. And I went to a public school, which is in Maryborough. And like I love all the people there that I know and stuff, but it is like one of the lowest socioeconomic towns around Victoria, really high teen pregnancy rate, really high STD rate per capita, stuff like that. It is quite rough. And I went to the public high school and I was just bored because I was quite smart. And so like year 7, year 8 is really like quite easy, I would say, in the education system for like a lot of people when you're transitioning from primary school. But like I loved doing well at school. I didn't have like the easiest childhood, so going to school and like getting praised and getting attention for being an awesome student was like my vibe. So I was very competitive, still am, and like always wanted to do really, really well. And I just found it easy to do well as well.
And so when you were in high school, was there a job that you really wanted to do when you grew up?
No, never.
No.
I don't know. I just always really struggled with that question. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, right? And I feel like when you're, even all the time, like people only talk to you about these really stereotypical jobs. And that's awesome. Like be a nurse or be a teacher or be a whatever. And so when you go into like a career counselor in like a country school and they're like, so what do you like? And I'm like, I don't know, man, school. Like I'm good at it. And he's like, be a teacher. And I was like, I don't. And I love teaching people, and I used to coach a lot of sport, and I was like, I don't think that's my path. So I was like, oh, health is like always growing. I was like, maybe I want to be like a nurse or a paramedic. I went and did, like, just on my own, I didn't have to. I went and did a week work experience in the Monash Medical Center, and I worked in the abdominal, like, post-surgery hardcore wing, and they were like letting me help with like gangrenous toes, and I was seeing them like vacuum up cuts. That doesn't freak me out. I grew up on a farm. Like I've seen some shit, but all the nurses were like, do not do this.
Really?
They were like, do not do this. Like, do not get into this profession. And I was like, well, say no more. Like this was fucked. So I'm not doing that again. And then I thought, okay, well, I applied for physio and dentistry, and I thought I would do one of those. I got into both. And then I never thought I would have a gap year. I ended up taking a gap year and working in a call center. And I was really good. I was like this 19-year-old chick coming in, like getting like top salesperson in this like 200 person cold calling center, like selling Origin Energy. And I'd never paid a bill in my life. No. And I was like, this is fun. What's this sales business? And then eventually I just sort of flipped open the uni book and I was like, oh, marketing and event management. I'll do that. And then and there's my uni. That's how I chose my path.
No way. So like, I feel like it takes a certain type of personality to go into a call center at 19 and like smash it.
Yeah. Puts hairs on your chest.
Yeah. But like, where did that come from, do you think?
Well, I know where it kind of come from because I moved out of home like as soon as I could, and I moved to Bendigo, right? And I was like, it'll be easy to get a job. I'm so employable. I'm sick. And then next minute couldn't get a job. And so if you're on Centrelink, which I was, they're like, well, you have to get a job. Here's a job at a call center. I didn't even really understand what a call center was. They're like, oh, it's doing sales. I was like, what's that? They're like, oh, you'll be doing this. I was like, cool. So aced the interview and then got it. And that's like how I got into it, right? Like I didn't probably wake up one day and was like, you know, what's a sexy career? Call center work. Give me some of that. Yeah. So that's kind of how I guess fell into it.
But in terms of like doing well in it, right? Because there's a difference between like getting a job and you can show up and like, you know, dial the numbers, but like
and there was a huge turnover. It's just a game. And ever since then, like after that, so they lost their contract and we got like 200 of us got made redundant. And a lot of people were like, oh, I'm just going to take 2 weeks off. And I was like, you fools. There's 200 salespeople who have just got made redundant in a small country town. Like that night I was applying for jobs. And then I ended up working at JB Hi-Fi in Bendigo doing telco sales. So this is during uni. I had another job after this in uni at an agency. But so doing telco sales, selling TVs, selling stuff. Like I just love that having to hit this goal. And I didn't realize it then, but I know it now. Like sales is just helping people. So I would just ask good questions and be like, oh, like, what do you need? Like, what's your goals? And then go, cool, let's like, and it was just genuinely helping people to find what they needed to find. And I was really good at sales there as well. Yeah. Lots of gold stars on my little JB Hi-Fi sales board.
Yeah. And I guess like knowing a little bit about what you've done like since then, a lot of it has been focused around sales. So what do you think there's like natural things to your personality that makes you good at sales?
Maybe.
Or is it like what's the split between like natural versus like learned?
Yeah, and this is the thing, right? Like I would say I'm somewhat naturally extroverted, but there was a point in my life, so before we moved to this country town, I used to get bullied horrifically when I was younger. We grew up in an area called Chelsea, which is kind of around the Melbourne area, like horrifically. Like kids in class would be like making pig noises because they can just smell when a kid's poor. Like they just know when you come from like not a well put together family. I had like very young parents. Like they just know, and I was like horrifically bullied. And so I remember when we were 10 being like, okay, and this is fucked for like a kid to think about, right? Okay, like I am not going to like deal with that here. And so I remember this kid like started like sort of making fun of me, and I just shut him down, was self-deprecating, and then no one ever bullied me ever again. Like, and that's like the change in it. So as a kid, I was really shy and really introverted. And I don't know, it's like, I guess it's been like learned behavior that's compounded over the years. But that's like the decision that I think, or like the thought process that has put me there. Because a lot of people are like, oh, but you're good at sales because you're extroverted. And I was like, but I wasn't. Like, I was a really shy kid. It was just compounded over time. And now you can't shut me up, see? It's going to be like a 3-hour episode.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. Because like I chat to a lot of people and you hear kind of a similar story of like whatever trade it was, they weren't it. And so they actually overcompensated because they needed to for some other reason. Okay, so you've gone to uni, you're studying marketing and sales, you're doing these part-time jobs on the side. What happens from there? You go through uni, you get a job straight out of uni, or like what's the next step?
So during uni, I took every single volunteer, chronic overachiever, chronic people pleaser, hello, still recovering. But I would do every volunteer opportunity, right? So I was volunteering in the Bendigo Business Council, as well as having this job. And then through that, I met an agency owner who had like a creative agency in Bendigo. And he was like, hey, I'm going to hire my first employee. Are you interested? And so I started there, and he's like, cool, so I have all these clients. You need to do SEO, Google ads, Facebook ads, build their landing pages, just figure it out. And I was like, okay, sounds easy. And so I was like getting listings on yellow pages for people, like just not doing awesome work, obviously. And then I worked there during uni. So I had a full-time job plus volunteering at these different places. Once I finished uni, my boyfriend at the time had already moved to Melbourne, and in Bendigo, you're kind of waiting for someone to die or retire before like a good job comes up, right? It's like, and I was like checking the obituaries, and I'm like, nah, all right, I guess I'm not going to be a marketing manager anytime soon. But I still didn't know what I wanted to do, right? And I just happened to know a friend of a friend who worked in this agency called King Kong, and she was like, oh, like today we went and did zero latency, this zombie shooting game. And I was walking in the driveway at work hoping that a car would hit me so I could go home. And I was like, that sounds way cooler than what I'm doing. So I applied there, got the job. And then from there, like it was a super young agency. I would have been there maybe at like 22 or 23. And within a few months was like building my first team. And it was like, here, now build a team of people that does this thing that you've just made up in this department.
Yeah, way. So, I mean, like you're clearly quite smart, bit of an overachiever, as you say yourself. But like, why do you think you were getting that much responsibility like early doors?
In King Kong or in that agency? One, because I just worked really hard. Like that was it. Like, and not in a healthy way. In a hashtag hustle, 12-hour days, doing everything that I needed to.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what I wanted to do. Like at the time I thought like I wanted to have a really big career. Like I had an idea of where I wanted to go, and I wanted to get there as fast as humanly possible. Also because somewhat right place, right time, you know, of course, there's always like a little bit of luck thrown in there. I was good at what I did in those agencies. Often like the best one becomes the manager. And I was the only one. And like we had one other person. It was like, well, this team's going to get big. You can have the job. And I was like, woohoo, you know? yeah, exactly. And that's like a side quest. Not everyone should be a manager that's good at what they do. I love leading people and I love mentoring and coaching, but some people think that's the only way up, right? And it is not for everyone, because you stop being the A player or the star of the show, and then and that's something I had to get really comfortable with, and I did, luckily, put the ego on the shelf of like, hey, my team did this, you did that, you're awesome. And it's not about me anymore. It was about these people that I was bringing like up and helping them to be better. Yeah.
I actually think that's a really good point, because I think, you know, when you go into one of these jobs, you obviously look at the people above you and you're like, okay, I want their job. And they're usually managing people or managing teams of people.
Yeah.
And I never even questioned, like, do I want to manage people? And there's elements of it that I enjoy, but there's also elements of it like I really don't enjoy, and I find like take a lot of energy from me. And that's actually one of the things I'm going through now is like, do I want to manage people again? Because it has a big impact on what you want to do. Even if you're if you're going to build a business, you're going to build a big business, you're probably going to manage people. But I guess it's just interesting that it's like, it's kind of the default that you think when you think of career progression, you think managing people, but that actually mightn't be
No. And this is
What
the
you
thing,
want.
right? As a good manager, I was helping my team to see that. I was like, you wouldn't like managing people because you just told me all the things you hate, and that's what a manager does. And so I was like, instead, it's when you're a good manager or a good coach, I was like, we're going to build you a different career path, and I'm going to show you the different alternative things that you could be doing, right? And I love managing people. After King Kong, I went to founder and built a team and managed people, and I loved it so much. In this company, Persuasion Experience, I do not want a big team. It's just too much work, and it's going to distract me from what I want to do. We want to keep our team extremely lean. I work really hard with the small team we have, and they are absolute killers. But it's funny how when I was in a job, I really wanted to be a manager, and I loved it, and I loved coaching and nurturing people. But now, like, it's switched a little bit, and it has to suit your priorities, even if you work in a company for somebody else, because managing, often you actually don't really get ahead. Like, oftentimes it's not necessarily like your stepping stone to get ahead, right? Like, if you're in middle management, a lot of people get stuck in middle management, and you have to really enjoy it.
Yeah. So wait, so why don't you want to manage too many people now?
It is annoying. Like, because I would be stuck managing people. And
Well, you liked it in the agencies, right?
because I didn't have to run a business at the same time.
Okay.
So now it's like, you've got all these
It's
other
like
things.
a second job. It's like,
Yeah, and it's not that I don't enjoy it. I love it, but I can see what would happen when you're like, we don't want to scale a big agency, right? I won't bore people with the details, but basically agencies typically have a very skinny profit margin. It's usually about 30%, all the way up from here to here. There's not much leverage you can get in
That's
it.
interesting.
Yeah. And I'm sure other agency owners might listen and disprove that. But just as a general rule of thumb, right? So when we've run the numbers, the trap you can fall into is like, okay, more clients, more people, more clients, more people. And it becomes a success trap. And we don't want that. We started this business as a freedom and a lifestyle business. And so we're very conscious to like not scale and grow because that's what is perceived success, right? Like, like a lot of agencies are like, well, we've got 50 employees. And I'm like, your overheads must be insane. 50 Aussie employees. Like, that's a huge amount of overheads. Like, we do not want that.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's like, that's fine if you're doing well.
Yeah.
But you know, then a few big clients pull out, you still have all these overheads.
Yeah.
That can be tough, and I guess it puts a lot of pressure on you as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, you lose a lot of the flexibility of it.
Yeah.
So like you were talking about, like when you went into these jobs, and you know, the fact that you're working very hard and that perhaps some of it was unhealthy. Like, do you look back on that and say, okay, that was worth it? Or do you ever look back and go, oh, I wish I'd actually been a bit more chill because I was young, I was like in my early 20s, I wish I'd actually done more things? Or like, how do you look back on that time?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in two minds about it, right? So I never did like a trip around Europe or like a lot of things that people do in their 20s. I was always taught good work ethic and you should have a job. And that is like the thing that you do, and that is the thing that you should always almost put first. So the negatives that I wish I didn't do is that I really sacrificed my mental health before I even knew what mental health was, really. And it was really poo-pooed. Like, and this is like a few years ago now, so it wasn't as big as a thing that it was. And I really sacrificed a lot of relationships and my own like mental health. I was doing a lot of binge drinking, agency culture, like Friday night drinking, hungover on the Saturday. Like just
that
to
like
cope.
Work hard, play hard.
Yeah, the work hard, play hard, and just to like cope with this, like what I was doing. But I also, in saying that, if I could go back and have this beautiful balance where I was working hard and doing the best, but I also was like going to the beach and having walks, sure, like I would do it, but I don't regret anything ever because everything helps me to get to where I need to be. And so sometimes people will be like, oh, like if you could go back and change something, what would you change, or what do you regret? And it's like, I've done a lot of dumb shit, but everything I've learned from, and I had to, and there were lessons that I think the universe has given me to learn that I had to be given. And if I never did those, I wouldn't be who I was today. And I look back at a lot of these like sort of milestone, I call them like the dumb shit stuff. All right, I call them I did dumb here. Yeah. And it's like, no, okay, but that moved me here, right? And there's infinite ways my life could go, and where I am right now is where I want to be. And it wouldn't be if I didn't do the dumb stuff.
Yeah. I actually completely agree with that.
Yeah.
I think the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's the difference between looking back and cringing at something. Oh fuck, that was
So
so
much
dumb.
cringe.
Like, but you have to do it, otherwise you didn't learn the lesson. You know?
Yeah.
And even if somebody told you the lesson, you
Yeah.
wouldn't have listened. You know.
Never.
So if I'm interested to learn, so I've never worked. I've worked in marketing quite a bit, but I've never worked on the agency side of things.
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of agencies, but like if somebody is considering like working at an agency, whether a small one or a big one, like what is life actually like? It sounds like it's a bit work hard, play hard. There's a bit of an agency culture around that, but I guess what does life look like if you're working at an agency?
Yeah, and of course, like it would depend, right? So
Sure.
I won't blanket all agencies, but I know most of them are very similar, and I've worked in a few of them. And I also think that only a certain type of person should work in an agency. I think it's very similar to a startup. I think you would thrive in it, you would love it, you'd be always busy and always learning. But for example, I've heard people in agencies going, "Oh, that's not in my job description." I'm like, girlfriend, you work in an agency. Like you everything's your job description. And so there's a certain like, you do need like a certain grit and determination, and you have to be a little bit sick, like in the head, to really enjoy it, because agency does churn and burn people. And like, I do think there's a shelf life for if you're in like a very fast paced agency. Like I was probably doing agency work for like 6 years or so, and then I started one. So lol, I'm sick in the head. I am the sick in the head person, obviously. But what I love about it is the breadth of clients that I got to work with. And so at King Kong, for example, by the time I'd finished, I'd worked on 400 campaigns, right? Who has worked on that many businesses? And that was everything from Brazilian butt lift doctors, porn addiction counselors, cigarette hypnotists, like how to stop smoking, up to like Metricon, big banks, like all of this lead generation. I didn't know anything about businesses really. And now I know so much about like 120 different industries.
Yeah.
Since working there. So I think I look really highly upon agency experience when I'm hiring, because I know it takes a certain type of person to be able to deal with that. And I know a lot of client side marketing is quite slow and it doesn't have that intensity. I would imagine a lot of the startups or the consulting you've done would be very similar to agency life, but a lot of internal companies are boring, and I know that they can't handle the pace of working in an agency.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's like, because I started off in management consulting, and one of the things I really liked about that was exact same, the breadth of clients. For two reasons. Is like, one, you just learn so much, so that if when you go on to your next job, you can be like, oh yeah, I've actually done a bit in the banking sector, I've done a bit working with consumer goods or whatever else it is. But then the second thing is like, it's like a job where you get to taste all the different industries.
Yes.
And then you're like, ooh, I never thought I'd like banking, but actually I really do.
Yeah.
So like, I really like that as like a first job, because you get to taste all these different things.
And you learn fast.
True.
I think it's really good if you're like, I want to be a marketer or what, like whatever, go get a job at an agency. That'll be the fastest crash course you can get to getting good.
Okay, I really hope that you're enjoying this chat that I'm having with Alicia. I've got one thing to ask from you right now. Tell me what you want to hear on this podcast. I am here to tell the stories of the people, the careers, the lifestyles that is going to help you figure out what you want to do and help you get into that career or that lifestyle that you want to have for yourself. So I'm literally here to interview the people that I find most interesting and that you want to hear from. So tell me, go to my LinkedIn, Stephen Duke, or send an email to StephenDuke8, Stephen with a PH, StephenDuke8@gmail.com, and tell me, what types of people do you want to hear? What questions do you have? What stories do you have? I'll respond to everybody, and it will be really, really helpful, because it just gives me direction in terms of who I can get on the podcast next and what types of stories I can tell. Thanks. Okay, so you're at King Kong. How long were you at King Kong for?
About 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you decided to leave.
Oh yeah. So this is a story. So then I decided to leave. You know when like you feel like you've expanded in the box, and then like there's nowhere for me to grow here. And that's such a millennial thing, right? I was there for 3 years and I was like, I've accomplished everything I could possibly do here. And it's like, I know, I get how that sounds, but I did. Like I was going to keep doing the same things again and again forever. And I, at that time, very ambitious, wanted to be climbing this ladder. So, the grass is not always greener. I went to this other agency who did a lot of video production, but they wanted to start like building out their social media stuff. So I was going to come in, I was going to help them set up the sales. I was going to build out a team, and eventually like there's this path where I could become like the general manager in this company. 2 weeks later that I started, COVID happened. And what I was doing was I was creating my own ebooks, calling the ebook leads to book an appointment with myself, taking those appointments, and then doing the onboarding and then doing the Facebook ads. But this is at a time where, if you remember the start of COVID, no one's spending money, right?
Yep.
And so this guy would say things like, Alicia, in front of the team, if Alicia doesn't start making more sales, you're all going to lose your jobs.
What the fuck?
Shit like that, right? And I was like, well, like I'm pretty like resilient. Like it takes a bit to shook with me. When I work at King Kong, I would deal with escalations. I loved it. I did cold calling. Like it takes a lot to like upset me, because I was quite numb at the time. Like I was good at repressing emotions.
Seems healthy.
Yeah, it seems really healthy. I was good at bottling. And he would just be saying stuff like that, and I'd come home to my partner and be like, not even come home, I'd just be sitting here because I couldn't leave the house. Like, oh my God, this is the most like horrific thing, and I'm going through this pandemic and I don't know what's happening, and I can't quit this job. Like, what's going on? Anyway, obviously, like I just started, I was there for 6 months, and it was some of the most brutal 6 months of my life. I know, woe is me, first world problems, but it was hard, like to have all of that going on. I was very thankful I had a job. Anyway, before anyone tries to cancel me or some shit, I had a job, I was lucky. But then, I found Founder, and then that's when I moved to Founder. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so what was your role at Founder?
So sales funnel and head of sales funnels and CRO. So same thing. They wanted to grow. Yep. They had one marketing manager who's amazing. His name's Dave and is a good friend and mentor of mine. But he was doing everything basically himself. And they were like, we need somebody in Melbourne who knows sales funnels and can build a team. I am the only person maybe in Australia who could do that exact thing. Yeah, right. I came in helping on like course launch, so creating new courses. So if you're in marketing, you might know like Nick Shackelford, is a Facebook ads guy. I worked with Joe DeCina, who started Spartan Race, and people like that, like getting to work with them and helping to like create the course and then marketing it. So having a big launch and then evergreening it. And evergreen just means putting it onto ads and doing optimizations so people buy more courses, right? Yeah.
It seems like you really liked your time at Founder.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was so good about it?
What was so good about it? It's always my team. I loved my time at King Kong as well. Like there was other thing that went on that like caused me to leave, but my role, my job, like helping businesses to like solve this problem and nurturing and coaching people like makes me so happy.
Really?
Incredibly happy. Yeah, I love it so much. And so doing the same thing at Founder, it was like new company, same thing that I'm really good at. And then for Founder, I was there maybe 18 months or so. A myriad of things happened to cause my leaving. But the main thing was Matt, my partner, and I were creating something called Operation Freedom. And so we go away and we were doing this before we had the business, but we would go away quarterly and yearly off-site. So we would go to like a Rosebud or a Daylesford and we would do life planning sessions.
When you say off-site,
like,
does this mean a holiday?
Yeah, it's like, let's get out of the house and somewhere new, but we would always try and find somewhere inspiring. So we would splash out and get like a really nice house with a jacuzzi or something. And then, we would have cocktails and be like, let's plan our lives and let's start figuring this out. And so we would figure out like, where do we want to be? And this is how it all started. So while I was at Founder, we had these side hustle clients. The funny thing is we were working separately. We have this similar skill set. And one day I was like, I've just brought on this really big client. I can't do it on my own. Can you help? And keeping in mind, I met my partner at King Kong. He was one of my employees. I know.
Oh, really? Yeah. I didn't know this part of the story.
It's funny if you're a 20-year-old woman, not funny if you're a 60-year-old man. So double standards working in my favor. Yeah, he was my employee. Like the management knew it was all above board. People couldn't tell because I wasn't like making out with him on the floor. And if he was bad, he would get reprimanded or whatever. Like, it's fine. But yeah, he was in my team. It's the Wild West in agencies. I forgot what tangent I was going on. So yeah, Operation Freedom, we would always go off. We would do life planning. There's certain areas of your life you can mark out of 10, see the gaps. And eventually we weren't dumb about it. We had 6 months of life savings. We knew what we wanted to do, but we kept making excuses. So we'd be like, when this happens, if this happens. And one day we were having breakfast and I was like, Matt, like, let's just do this. Like, let's just do it and figure it out. And he's like, yeah, like we're just making excuses. So we shook hands. We both quit our jobs that day. He was at another big company, big exciting company as well. We were both making good money, right? Like six-figure money. And we were like, let's just do it. Like our goal was freedom of time and place. And when we were like, we can't have this in our jobs, we've had a really big like personal finance journey as well. Like we had our systems, but we were like, true wealth for us is going to come from having a business. And I never thought I would own a business ever. Like I just never thought that would ever be, I just never even thought about it.
Why?
I never saw people doing it. And growing up, the people I did see doing it were small business owners working a gajillion hours a week. And I just didn't resonate with entrepreneurship. I think maybe like typically it's like very romanticized and it's like this like erratic male who has this crazy idea and he was selling sour worms at school. And then it's like, I was like, oh, that's not me then. Cause I just didn't identify as like that, me being that archetype. I always thought I would like become like a CEO of someone's company, or like I would jokingly say like I want to be 3IC somewhere. Nobody really knows what you do. You have a corner office, you get paid buttloads of money, and you kind of just say stuff at people. And I was like,
sounds great.
Yeah, I was like, that's my dream job. Like I would just jokingly say that, like I'm going to work at someone's company, take home $500,000 or whatever, and just you know, work lots, but who no one really knows what I do. Yeah.
So you mentioned something about when you were doing this Operation Freedom.
Yeah.
And you're talking about like scoring different parts of your life.
Yeah.
What's that about?
So if you don't measure something, you can't improve it, right? And so a lot of us, we know we maybe want something more or something better, but I just work really well within like systems and like having things like very like clear of what something is. And I think it's like a very typical life design kind of thing, right? So out of 10 or 5, you can do your wealth, your health, your spirituality, friendships, love, like these like things that are really important to you. And then just see where you rank and you can see how you're improving. But you can also see where you should be focusing on for that quarter and what you want to improve on. So for example, one of my things in the past has been like, I don't feel like I have a network of like friends close to me. A lot of my friends are from Country Vic, so they're like spread all out. And I was like, okay, like my friends are like a 3 out of 10. I'm going to keep contact with them, but I want to improve my circle and my network. And then once you know the goal, you can chunk the goal down and start to move towards it.
Okay, so you talk a bit about life design.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So in retrospect, I don't know this at the time, like I didn't know this at the time, but I was operating on these invisible scripts, right? Where you don't realize, but a lot of your programming happens in your brain by the time you're like 4 to 7. So what I started to realize was I was like going on this life that was perceived success to me. I thought that's what I was meant to be doing, right? I was just operating on what I thought was right. And it was a series of just things I read and studying that I did, because I read a lot of books and I study a lot of things, that eventually led me to like, oh, okay, I don't actually have to be doing this. And I was like, oh, well, what do I want, right? And I'd never asked myself that question, like what makes me happy and what do I want? And it's very confronting when you ask yourself that question and you do not know the answer. It's really full on. And so what do I still want? Like I have somewhat of an idea and I'm getting there, but the idea is that you can live an infinite amount of lives, right? And they're all right. And what I do is I get really caught up in being perfect and like, am I doing this right? Am I doing this perfect? And so recently I did ayahuasca in Mexico because I've been going on this spiritual journey, which is a whole other thing of like learning about spirituality. And I've been very neglectful of like that part of me and learning about these things. And during my trip, I kept on being like, am I doing this right? Like, am I the best at ayahuasca? And the spirit's like, girl, not in this, like this is Alicia language now, I'm translating. But it was like, how funny that you're in this other realm, this other universe. You don't even have a body. Like I was cooked, like had no body. And that you're so worried about this, like, you know, and so like I've been like unpacking a lot of things in my integration from that experience of like, and this is a big one, right? Like trying to live this perfect life, but there isn't this perfect life. So in my trip, part of it was all at once, every single life I could have ever had, and every path I could ever be on, I saw it all at once. And so, yeah, it was crazy. And it was like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're going to live this life and none of them are right. You go with the flow, and you just be. Like, you go and you do what you need to do, and none of them are about being perfect. There's no right way to human, you know? And so part of that is like, yeah, like, we're not ants or bees where there's a program, and if we're doing the wrong thing, then that's bad. It's like, no, like, as long as you're not harming anybody, there's no wrong way to be, and there's no wrong way to live this life. But this has taken me a really long time to get to here. Like, I'm different to how I was 2 months ago before I did that. But if I can tell people this, it moves you along faster, right? If you can learn from other people's trauma, you move faster. So this life design thing has been this ongoing thing of, what do I actually want? What actually makes me happy? And how do I define success for myself?
So, like, what is it that you want, or how do you define success?
Yeah, to me, it's being happy. And so a lot of people might put a monetary figure on it. I know how much money I want every month to unlock the life that I want.
You do know?
Yeah.
How much is it?
$30,000 a month.
Okay.
That's not crazy, right?
Take home in your pocket.
Yeah. After tax. And I like, and that's it. Like, could I build a big multi-billion-dollar business? Yes, because I'm sick and I know I would love it. And like, I have to check myself, because that's optimizing for the ego, not optimizing for happiness. Mm-hmm. And so there's been times in our business where we're like, let's do more, let's do this. And it's like, no, that's not our North Star. It's lucky that we're clear on that. Our North Star is freedom, and we don't need millions and millions and millions of dollars. Maybe one day when I'm older and wiser, I'll build a big company. But right now we want to experience life and we want to be happy. So like, where do I want to get to? I know in all of my facets, I know down to the detail what my dream day looks like. I've written it out. I know what I see when I wake up. I know like who I talk to.
Really?
I know what I do.
That's a cool exercise.
Yeah, like viscerally. And I do it every year, and I read back on it when I need a reminder, because what I think a lot of people struggle with is they don't know their why. Yeah. And if you have a really strong why, you can like keep doing these things. Like, every day in business is hard. It's not easy, but I know my why and it keeps me going. And so because a lot of people don't know that, or a lot of people think that passion is the key. Yeah, like, am I super passionate about funnels? Like, I am, you know, in a weird way, but I prefer talking about this sort of stuff, like, and unpacking this. But it's like, what's my purpose? And I have a purpose. I know where I'm moving towards, and that purpose drives me, and my why drives me a lot more than like passion is more like lust, you know? It fizzles. Yeah. You can't hold on to it. It isn't good fuel forever.
And so do you define your purpose as like moving towards this life goal of like kind of happiness in this ideal day, or is it something different?
So that is part of it, because, you know, it's like the basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Or in a simple way, if you're on an airplane, you put the air on you before you put it on other people. My goal, like in like life and what I want to achieve, isn't like around business and monetary. Like, I have like goals of like, I'd love to have workshops where I go and help young women in disadvantaged areas and like teach them about confidence and life skills, and like just the stuff that I never learned, the life skills that people never teach you, right? So that's like where I would love to go in the future. But there's a lot of things I need to do now to set myself up where I can act in that way. And money just happens to be the answer to freedom, right?
Yeah.
And so, because I grew up very poor, like dirt poor, single mum on like welfare or Centrelink here, so like 30K, 4 kids, that's crazy, right? I don't know how she did it. And you're taught like these certain scripts around money, like being rich is bad, wanting money is the devil, like don't get a credit card, like all of this stuff. And so it's been one of the invisible scripts I've had to unwrite to be like, no, like money can equal freedom. You can do things with your money. Like, I was able to take my little brother on a surprise trip to Queensland, or I can like take my family out, or I can buy them these things. You know, like money is a tool for doing good, but I think that a lot of people can have that script around money, and it's just thinking, are these my own thoughts? Yeah,
definitely. I think there's so much to unpack there, I think, and I definitely want to come back to like how you think about money more broadly. But one thing that you're kind of reminding me of there is, I had this thought the other day, which was like, we focus so much on how we can get money, and we don't think too much about how we spend it and like what we spend it on. And so you can kind of go through your life and like, you get a better job, you do well, you get more money, but are you getting better at turning that money into happiness? because that's ultimately like all it is this like kind of middleman between your work and what you do, and then happiness on the outside. And so I think it's actually a skill to know where you can spend your money that actually turns it into happiness.
Yes.
And I haven't really seen much like people talk about that.
It's called your money dials, right? So I learned about this in I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. And so Matt and I think about our money dials. So Matt's money dials are a little bit different to mine. My money dials are sometimes like my beauty appointments, so the idea is that you cut mercilessly on the shit that doesn't make you happy, and you spend as you want on what are your money dials. And so going back to your point, one of the things that we remind each other of, it doesn't matter how much you make, it matters how much you keep and how you made it, right? Because you can make millions of dollars and be the most unhappy son of a bitch in the world. So does money make you happy? Well, I think it makes it easier to make you happy, but you need to be happy in here first. And then you need to know what makes you happy and how you can spend that money. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
And so going back a little bit in the conversation, so when you talked about how you define what you want and your goals, right? Because I would say that's the biggest thing that I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
Not to be cocky, but I kind of like, once I figure out what the goal is, I'm pretty confident.
It's over for you bitches. Once I figure this out.
But I'm like, I'm pretty confident I can get there.
Of course you can.
You know?
Yeah.
But
what is it?
Yeah. And like, I've struggled a lot with that. I think I'm probably closer now, but it's like how defining the goal, I think is probably the hardest thing for me right now. So like, is there anything that you did or that you found or books that you read or anything else that helped you like get because it seems like you've got a pretty clear vision of what that goal is.
Yeah, and in case I come across like put together and I talk very confidently, I'm in sales, right? I'm still every day like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, what is going on? And it's this ongoing process, right? I think that the best way, and I've just started reading this other book called Designing Your Life, which are by these product designers in Stanford. It's really interesting. They teach this course at Stanford, and this book walks you through how to design your life. And I've read and listened to a lot of life designing stuff, but I'm really enjoying this. And one of the concepts that I've read so far is this idea of prototyping, you know, and not trying to get it perfect the right time. So a product designer doesn't just come up with the new MacBook Air hinges and al dente chef's kiss gets it right. There's this iteration process of seeing what works and what fits and figuring it out. So the best thing that I can say to people is you need to test these things. So for ages I was like, I didn't know what made me happy, and it was really embarrassing, and I didn't know what I liked. I didn't have any boundaries. I had to do a lot of therapy to like undo a lot of things. I was trying to treat myself like a robot, and just like I was just ticking stuff off. I was never living in the moment. I was just like, I accomplished this, what's next? I accomplished this, what's next? And I was never like fully being present and feeling joy and enjoying the journey, right? And so what I would say to people is you have to test it out. What have I done? I've gone and done like burlesque classes. I've gone and done like all of this random stuff to be like, well, what makes me happy? I just don't know. And I'm getting closer. I'm still not there. It's really hard, but what I think is it's okay not to know, but it's not okay to try and figure it out. And so if you don't know, that's so normal, and it will change all of the time, but it's like your mission to figure out what it is, right? And so what is that winning behavior, or what is that process that you can run so that you can figure out what it is for you?
I really like that idea of prototyping, because I think what I would have got stuck in before was analysis paralysis of like sitting down and like writing, okay, I'm going to write down, you know, what I like and what I think I like and what I might want. And then the next day I'll wake up and look at the list and be like, I'm not so sure that I like them anymore. Maybe I'll make a new list. But you're just in your head, like trying to figure out what the hell you want. And it's impossible. And actually I think almost by accident, I've probably tried a bit of this prototyping now. So
you have,
because like say, well, I'm doing this trip, but then also even say with this podcast, like this is something that I've thought about for a while. And I was like, oh, would I like it? Would I not? And you come up with a million reasons why you mightn't or you don't. And then I sat down and recorded the first episode. And at the end of it, I was like buzzing. I was like, I wish it could have gone on for like another hour. And I was like, I want to do another one. And I was like, okay, maybe I do like this.
It lights you up, right? And I started a podcast during lockdown, and we've stopped it now. But it was on my mind, right? And so one time a mate of mine showed me like, you know, like a bell curve.
Yeah.
And it's like this, it was like a
The
meme.
dim-wit one.
No, it was like a meme bell curve. So on one end, it's like I call them like the chads. Like
I know the one you're talking about.
I think good idea, I do. And on the other end, it's the geniuses, right? Like Elon Musk. I think good idea, I do. And then in the middle is like all of these like, oh, I never do. And I was like, I don't know what it was about this meme. And I was like, I do not want to be that middle person. Like, so now if I have an idea, like moving to Bali, I'm like, I've thought about this 2 or 3 times. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
That's it. Like that's my decision. Like if it recurs in my mind, I just do it now. Like, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And I want to talk about moving to Bali as well, actually. But to wrap up the finance side of things, because this is like, it's a huge thing for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Like, realistically, is managing your own finances and getting wealth. Even if your goal is not money, the reality is that like money is what leads to a lot of people's goals. So how do you think about building wealth or managing your own finances to help you achieve the goals that you have?
So the most important thing is to set up the system, right?
Okay.
And to have like, so here's the books that you should read. Barefoot Investor. I had a big friction on that because I thought it was really lame when I read it.
So do I.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is actually really good. I was like, damn, I should have read this. I don't know what I thought. Probably because like all your parents try to make you read it, and it's
and it's just also like the cover of the book or something freaks me out. Like,
it's something where I'm like, this is not a vibe, but it's really good. Okay. So there was that. And then I also read I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Those 2 books helped me with systems. And then I set them up. So there's this thing called buckets, right? And then a certain percentage, I would set my goals, a certain percentage went into those. And that was awesome because I don't have to think about it. You want to make one decision that saves you from 1,000 decisions in the future. And this money does compound. So I started investing in over 2 years or less. By the time I was 27, I had 100K in my portfolio in my ETFs. And I was really proud of that, right? And I was like, oh my God, like, I just don't know. I just thought I'd always be working and living paycheck to paycheck. I can't believe I accomplished this. But it's really easy if you set up systems for success. And maybe because I've always built teams and now I'm building a business, I try to implement these systems. But all I think about is like, what is this winning behavior? What is the winning behavior that I can make my program, my default, to hit the outcome? So a lot of people get obsessed with the outcome and then they never hit it, right? Because they're like, oh, and then they make it too hard. Outcome, chunk it down by quarter, by month, and then you just do little things every day, every week that slowly get you there because the time will pass anyway. Yeah. So you asked me a different question and I ranted. Systems, build the system. Then you want to put more money in the system. So do you need to get more skills to get a pay increase at work? Don't just go and ask for a pay rise, right? Like become more valuable to the company. Maybe you do need one, but become more valuable to the company. Do you need a side hustle? Do you need to start your own business? Whatever it is, like just you do that. You set the system and then you put more fuel on the system. Yeah. Easy.
And then I'm interested on the investing side of things then. Yeah. So you put the money into the system, you obviously spend a certain amount of it, you save others. What do you do from an investment perspective to kind of grow your wealth over time?
Yeah, I'm going to say this is not financial advice because we used to say that on our podcast. So now you'll never get sued. This is not financial advice. So I'm not like magically smart at investments. I actually am like somewhat math illiterate and I find it really hard, like numbers, and I find it really overwhelming. I'm good at talk and language, but maths I'm really, really poor at. So I keep it simple. I just invest in ETFs or index funds, which are like an accumulation. So maybe like the top 200 in something or the top 1,000 of something, right? That's my appetite for risk. And that's what I do. I do have some weed stocks and other dumb stuff, but that's a small amount of my portfolio to keep it fun. And I don't mind if I lose that money. It's exciting, whatever. I only invest in things I understand. So I never invested in crypto. I never invested in NFTs. And now I'm the smartest person in the world, right? Because that stuff will crash. But I could have made millions. I don't know. I just didn't understand it. So I don't invest in it. And a lot of people will say, oh, I don't want to invest my money in the stock market because I'll lose it. But this is my logic of why I think that's dumb. Because when you invest in the stock market, you are investing in businesses, which means you're investing in people and you're investing in our society growing and compounding and getting better. If the stock market permanently crashes, we have a wider societal problem, then your stock's going down, right? Like that just means like we can't business no good no more. And like, hey, it could last 5 or 10 years like recessions can. But if we never come out of it, it's probably like an apocalypse.
Yeah. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Like it's probably an apocalypse. Like, and it won't matter how much money you had because you have to sell goats and cans of food now anyway.
Yeah. I actually do agree with that. Okay, so then shifting over to the Persuasion Experience side of things. So you've been at it for 15 months.
Yeah.
You do it with your partner,
Yeah.
Matt. What's that like working with your partner? Because I mean, I don't have a partner right now, but if somebody suggested starting a business with my partner, I'd be like, oh, I'm not sure that that's a good idea. I'm not sure I'd recommend that to somebody.
Yeah. So what's it like? So should everyone do it? No. Is it a strain on relationship? Yes. Here's how we deal with it, and here's what we thought about before we did that. We had already worked together, so he already knew that I was the boss. No, I'm just kidding. But he was already really well trained. No. I hope he doesn't listen this far in the episode. He might get over my voice by now. But like we knew we had a really respectful working relationship. We're also geeks at direct response that we love. So when we first started dating, I would come over and we would drink wine and watch infomercials and like tear down the infomercials. So we're both really passionate about what we do, which is actually a really strong part of our connection. But not everybody has that connection, right? Like most partners aren't in the same industry, doing the same thing, reading the same books, geeking out on the same stuff. So we had that connection already. On top of that, we didn't do those side hustles together for so long because we didn't want to mix business and relationship, right? And I was still learning how to be good at relationship. When we first started dating, like I couldn't even say what emotions I was feeling at the time. Like that wasn't a good fit. But as like we did it, we were like, wow, imagine if we combined our powers for good. And then we did it. And we sat down when we started the business and we did all of our contingency planning. What happens if we break up? What happens if someone's chronically ill for an indefinite period of time? What happens? What happens if someone cheats? What happens if this happens? So we have we've agreed on the playbooks of what will happen if one of these bad things happen. Yeah, we've agreed on it all. We did it over cocktails. Most planning is over cocktails. We don't drink as much now, but during lockdown, coping. So yeah, and like everything that could happen, like we've already decided, we've already agreed, so we can do things amicably. However, when you work with somebody in a house together, we were working here in lockdown, and now we work from home. And how do you keep the love alive? Like we've been together for 5 years now, which is not a super long time, but it's past that honeymoon phase, right? And we've been doing this for about 15 months together. So we schedule in fortnightly date nights, non-negotiable. We take turns in organizing it. There's a little surprise. We take each other out. What we're getting better at is having time away from each other. So last year, Matt just happened to go on a conference to Bali, and I just happened to have a girls' trip in Bali a week each. And I was like, wow, we're having 2 weeks away from each other every year. Love ya, but get out of the house for a week. Skip. Yeah. And what else? We just have to be very brutally honest with each other. If someone does something wrong, you have to be good at because I'm very masculine energy at work, right? But I can't be very masculine energy all the time in our relationship. So I have to switch out of that mode, and then I try and move into my feminine energy more. And that's hard when you're working from home and with the same person. What else? And then every Friday we fill in a little quiz that goes out to us with the same questions. And then we always, in one of the last questions, what did somebody do that week that made you proud? So that we're always making sure that we're giving.
That's so cute.
It's oh, this week you did this. And you're like, oh, thank you. Yeah. But we still, we make sure we say, oh, but also you did this and that was dumb. So can you not do that again? So yeah, it's just good communication. Could I have done it 2 to 5 years ago? No way. I didn't have the emotional intelligence to hold down a relationship and to build a business. Are we perfect at it? No. Has it taken a toll on certain elements of our relationship? Sometimes. But would we change it? No. It's just so exciting, and we get to move so much faster. I mean, sometimes I'm in the shower and Matt will be I had this idea, and I'm like, dude, get out. Or he's falling asleep and I was like, did you do that client thing? And we're getting better at putting up boundaries.
And is that something you consciously try and do, or is it just unrealistic?
So now we just have to say, I'm not in work mode right now. Okay. I'm home Alicia. Yeah. And so it'd be sorry, office hours are tomorrow from 6 a.m. Just slack me and I'll look at it tomorrow, or vice versa. Yeah. But we're getting better at it, right? Okay. Because it was really exciting at the start and we could move really quick. The downside of that is that we overthink a lot of things. And then we can keep shifting and we shouldn't be shifting. But anyway, end monologue, talking stick, back to you. That's what it's like working with your partner.
Yeah, no, I'm actually really interested in that. Like, when I listen to this, it sounds great, right? Because if you've got somebody who you obviously like enough to be in a relationship with them, and then you're able to also have this like exciting business with them that you have like a shared passion around, like, that sounds great. Like, it's because I mean, obviously it's not for everybody, but you know, there are lots of couples out there and somebody does something and then the other person does a completely different thing for work, and then they come home and it's like the work interests don't overlap. And so, you know, the chat around the dinner table is going to be around something else. I'm sure there's interests that they do share. But for me, it actually sounds like a pretty cool mix to be able to come home and sit down, or you are at home already, right? But like when you sit down for lunch and you're like, you've got something that you are both invested in, that you share an interest in. I think that sounds pretty cool. And so how is the business going? Like, if you've got this goal of, you know, this ideal day and the $30,000 a month, where are you on your path to that goal?
So our first year of business, we had $500,000 in revenue, which is good. And a lot of that was profit, right?
That's huge.
Yeah. And like, I don't think sometimes I say that and it just is like, it's like an order, but I've been really thinking about it lately. And I was like, oh, Matt, I think, that was good. We made a lot of money, right? And we used a lot of that money to reinvest back into the business. But I also was working 14-hour days because I have an addictive personality. Luckily, mine doesn't go to heroin, it goes to working, which can be just as chronically bad, but I do have an addictive personality and I find it really hard to know when to stop. Like, you know, those dogs that have that automatic throwing toy and some of those golden retrievers died? That's me. If someone doesn't turn off the dog toy throwing machine, like, I just will keep going until I die. Anyway, so I often think about that when I'm like, turn the computer off before you die. So what does that look like? That's what we did in our first year. And now we're like, we just need to slow down. We just need to be okay with not making that money. And we need to actually, I'd prefer to be earning less. And we didn't pay ourselves heaps of money. We reinvested a lot of it. We also use the business to fund a lot of things, right? Like tax advantage things, right? So how close are we to that? You'll have to ask again in the year. We've made the plan. We'll hit it if we follow this plan and we don't get distracted, because we have set up the winning behavior and the systems to get there now. And it's all churning. I'm confident we'll get there by the end of the year. And mind you, I want 30K, Matt wants 30K. I don't know if we will both get there, but if we can get up to like 15, 20 this year, I mean, like, I'm not going to sniff at that. And I'm working less, right? And I'm working 4 or 5 hours a day. I'm almost happy to sit there because there's like that law of diminishing returns. Like, how much extra do I make
100%
for how much more work I have to put in? And I don't want to work that. I don't want to have to work that much, which is so freeing to say, because I used to work so much, right? And you have to work smarter, not more hours. So that's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah. And so you've also decided to move to Bali.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
We were like, we should live in Bali. Like, yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Like, literally just like,
really?
Because we want to have freedom of life and place. And we've spoken about it. And this is just going back to, if you think it, do it, right? Like, good idea, do it. And we're only going to be young ones. Maybe one day we start procreating and having a mortgage. I'm not going to be able to live in Bali then. So it's like, we just want to have these experiences while we can. We're lucky that we work in a industry where we can work anywhere. Like, it's not going to impact anything. A client doesn't know whether I'm here or in a villa in Bali. I mean, unless the internet's shit, then they'll probably know. But like, it's just like, we want to do it. Like, and that's like, that's it. It's just like, it sounds exciting. It might be terrible. If it's terrible, we're going to move up through the rest of Southeast Asia and then just like sort of maybe like end in Italy or Greece or something. But this is the thing, right? As somebody who loves to control things and know down to like the minute detail, this is something that I'm pushing myself to do. Like, I don't know where I'll be. So we should be out of here at the start of April. I don't know where I'll be in 2 months' time. I don't know where I'll be in 6 months' time. I don't know where I'll be in 12 months' time. And it's scary to us both, but it's going to expand us, right? You can either do activities that keep you neutral, that shrink you and detract you, or that expand you. And for us, this is an expansion activity. And I don't know, which I haven't said I don't know this whole podcast, right? So I don't know.
No, it's like, I mean, I'm kind of going through something similar myself in terms of like, I don't know I don't know where I'll be in 2 months or 4 months or 6 months. Like, and I say I would have been quite similar to you in terms of like the idea of that even a year ago would have like freaked me out. Like, I'd be like, wow, I gotta plan this shit. Like, okay, I've probably got maybe one or two more questions and we'll wrap up. So if somebody is thinking about, you know, going out and starting their own business, maybe similar to what you do, maybe like slightly different, what would you say to them? Because I think it's important to be realistic. Like it actually isn't for everybody.
Yeah,
so because there is a like, oh, just do it, right? But the reality is like there's personalities and skill sets that won't be suited to it, and they won't have a good time.
And you don't realize in a job, and even though I worked in startups, I was very close to the owner and I knew more of the background work than what you would know in a bigger company. I knew, right?
Yeah.
And I'd always worked in small businesses and I even had friends that were business owners. But it just changes where like, then if you have staff, their livelihood is now, like I'm not just, when I'm like out there making sales, it's not just for me and Matt to have some play money. It's like, well, I pay people. I have to make payroll. And the answer, there's like this big thing of like this, like, oh, quit your 9 to 5. It's like, that is not the answer for everybody. And I think some people know they're on a good wicket, right? You can have a very happy life. That was always my plan. You can have a very happy life working in a job, hopefully that you do love most of the time. The answer is not starting a business. It's very hard. And if I could go back, would I start an agency? It's a very hard model to crack. Ideally, like what we'll end up doing in the future is maybe buying businesses that are already really going well in a niche, like probably in a boring niche, and then coming and doing really good sales and marketing and taking them to the next level. Yeah. That will be our next level of our like entrepreneurship journey. Because starting a business from scratch is also really hard. And you have to be a salesperson, a marketer, HR, like all of these things. So in saying that, if you know, like, yes, like you have the draw to doing this, what I would say is you don't want to be stressed when you start. So we had that 6 months of our own lifestyle runway. We knew, and I didn't skimp. I was like, I still want to go and like do this. I'm going to get a massage here. Like this is how much money I need to live my life.
Be realistic about it.
Yeah. And I spent it all. I was stupid. I didn't adjust my lifestyle because like we went from earning lots of money to nearly half when we didn't pay ourselves for 4 months.
Okay.
And then then our bankroll is not much, like our pays, because we'll pay dividends out of the business. That's a better way to do it. But for ages, like I was back on like not much. I won't say, but just not much at all. So yeah, make sure that you have that money, that buffer, so that you can do it and you can be comfortable and you won't get it right the first time. We failed at 4 businesses. We started a hair gummy e-commerce, dumb. We started a lavender sleep spray, dumb. Obviously we thought like an e-commerce store was like the solution. It is not the solution. Then I had a side hustle called Marketing Manager for Hire. And then we started a business called Ecom Email Experts. And we did that for like when we first quit our jobs, we were doing that for a few months. And then we found Persuasion Experience. So you will not find the proper thing, the thing that's right for you. You have to get out there, like prototype it, right?
Yeah.
And keep trying until you find it.
Yeah, I like that. I also like the idea of starting a business is not the answer.
Yeah.
Because similar to like getting money, it's like, it's the middleman, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you do the exercise of the life design where you say, okay, well, this is my goal. I want X amount of dollars, or here's how I want to spend my time, or here's what my ideal day is. Then you can say, okay, well, is starting my own business going to get me this? Or actually in my current job, if I just change 1 or 2 things, can I get the same thing?
Exactly.
And that might be it will definitely be a lot easier path if you're able to do that one rather than having to go and start a business.
Exactly. If you don't want like the stress and like working the weekends, like you don't get those boozy brunches when you first start out for the first several years, depending on your goals, like you're not better off starting your own business. Like you actually have to take several steps back, which will then allow you to propel forward, but you have to have that appetite of eating shit for a while.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, last question. You mentioned a few books already, some on the life design side, some on the financial freedom side of things. Are there any books, movies, podcasts, experiences that you recommend to somebody who's kind of like, hey, whatever I'm doing right now, I know it's not it, and I want to figure out what it is and go and get it.
Yeah. So one of the best books I ever read that totally changed my mind, like how I thought, and probably stopped me from being a petty bitch was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, yeah.
And I read it every year. And like I just remember reading it being like, this is, and I think it's like the first time I became like self-aware maybe, or like somewhat like a bit more self-aware, because I was really young, like in my early 20s when I read it. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then it compounds from there. So if you've never read that, definitely that. All of the personal finance books, read like you don't have to agree with people, right, as well. Like people like sometimes look at these authors and they're a white balding man with a huge handlebar mustache and they're like, I can't learn anything from that person. You can learn something from everybody, right? So don't like stay in your echo chamber. Go out and like expand your knowledge and what you think about. So for wealth and business, Matt and I, our diehard like mentor that we like read and watch everything is Dan Kennedy. And he's like very well known if you're in like direct response, but he's like the OG of like marketing and business growth, and just the mindset that I've learned from him. I don't agree with everything because some of it's too cutthroat for me, but it changes my thinking and it challenges me to think differently, which is what you want to be doing, right? You don't want to read shit and watch shit that you agree with. That's not how you grow.
Yeah.
You want to read stuff that challenges you. And so in saying that, what I would leave everybody on is one of the best things I ever did about 6 months ago was that all of my social media I knew was an echo chamber, super left echo chamber, right? And I just started getting really outrageous, and I read that like social, and I watched that social documentary, I'm in marketing, and I was like, what if I make a YouTube channel that I train it to show me right-wing conservative stuff? So I started watching Ben Shapiro, Matt Smith, Candace Owens, and that trained like my algorithm. And I don't agree with everything, but it challenged me to become an independent thinker. And I think that's one of the best skills I've learned in the last 6 months. And I can, you know what, I don't know if you've ever played The Sims, and when you see your sim level up, like I felt the leveling up somewhat. Really? And I was like, yeah, this, and some of my values have shifted because I was like, my thoughts actually weren't my own, right? And so that's the best thing that you can do is every time you have a thought, think, is that my thought? And then go and try and convince yourself otherwise. Yeah.
That's actually a super cool idea because like we know that we end up wanting a lot of the things that the people we hang around with want. Yeah. And that's why they're always like, you know, be very thoughtful about who you spend your time with, because like you're going to start reflecting like their values and their desires and everything else. But then we don't always think about, well, we spend a lot of time online, and so they are our online friends in like a weird kind of way. And so like if we're seeing all these things and it's like, oh, well, these people want this, like subconsciously you're going to start wanting what
and you
they
believe
want.
Those things, you act like them
100%. Yeah. So I really like that idea. I think it's it's tough to do because I don't know how do you do it on Instagram, right? It's not like you can just like
I don't have any of that shit on my phone anymore.
Well, that's probably healthy.
Probably. Sometimes I lapse, and then on the weekend I like download it so I can post like shit posts of me drinking, like, you know, just like the worst selfie footage in the world because the people need to know. But for the most part, it's a waste of time. Like it truly is. And I watch a lot of Netflix. I'm not one of those people that are like, don't watch TV. Like I watch like Nailed It. I watch Physical 100. I watch all of the dumb shit on there. But I'm like more diet conscious of the information that I consume. So like I'm just a bit more conscious of what I'm letting in here, right? Because we don't even understand how these things work. I'm pointing at my brains for everyone on audio. Like we don't understand, and it's just like it's programming you more than you realize.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it.
Yep.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Yeah, thanks. Really, it was nice to meet you in person.
Yeah, I know.
Stephen and I used to work together. Stephen hired me as a contractor. That's how good I am at sales, everybody. That's how we know each other.
I actually have to say, I remember going through the sales process with you and just being like blown away. I was like, this sales experience feels beautiful. I was like, I almost didn't want to sign the contract because then I was like, the sales ends.
Sell me more shit.
Yeah, I was like, I want to be wooed.
Yeah, exactly. More whining and dining. But so thank you for having me on. It's really awesome.
Thank you. So I hope you enjoyed that chat that I just had with Alicia. I know I certainly did. I came away actually pretty pumped and with a lot of energy after it. There's a few things that I found particularly helpful and insightful from this chat. So the first one was the benefits of working in an agency or in a consulting business early on in your career. So that's something I did, something Alicia did with the marketing agencies that she worked for. And the benefits of being able to taste lots of different parts of an industry and get that really broad breadth of experience, like her working on 400 different campaigns, that's huge. You don't get that in-house. And I think there's a lot to be said for working for an agency or a consulting business earlier on in your career. The second thing that I took away from it was the insight that she gave into running an agency. So I was really surprised to hear that most agencies will only ever really generate a 30% profit margin, no matter how much they can grow. And as a path that I was potentially considering myself of having my own agency, especially because I'm coming from a background in marketing, so it seems like one potentially natural step, I was very interested to hear that and hear just how hard it is to scale, because it is a largely people business. And that falls into the chat that we had as well around managing people, and the fact that managing people isn't always the best progression for everybody, because not everybody wants to manage people. And so I'm thinking about that myself. If I wanted to go down the route of opening up my own agency and having my own business, do I really want to be managing teams and people again? And there's benefits to it, but right now I'm not sure that it is something that I want to do. I love her concept of prototyping your life. I've fallen into that trap so many times myself, of just over analyzing things and not actually testing them out. And to go test something out, see if you like it in a tiny way, pick it up as a hobby, do a class in it, do a course in it, see if you like it, and if you do, then hang on to it. I also took away her focus on process and structure. As we said on the pod, I've worked with her before when I was at Wayflyer, and she is super structured and super process orientated. Everything from how she runs her business to how she runs her sales process to clearly how she works with Matt, in terms of all these agreements that they've written down, the deals that they've done, and the survey that she does on a Friday and everything else. So I've taken that away as something really important. It seems like a big part of her success is that process and structure that she's brought to running her business and managing her life, and it's something that I would actually like to implement a lot more, especially when I don't have the structure of a 9-to-5 job. And so I think those are the main things that I took away from this chat. She's a very inspiring person. I really liked the transparency that she had around the goals that she'd set herself. That was one last thing that I really loved, was that she has set herself this monetary target of $30,000 per month, and she knows that she could set her target higher and that she could go and build a massive business, but she also knows that that won't bring her any incremental happiness. And so I love that, because especially for ambitious people, you can fall into the trap of wanting more and more and more on the financial side without realizing, actually, is that more money going to turn into happiness for me? And so I love the fact that she's kind of set herself this goal, which is a big goal, of course. Taking home $30,000 a month is a lot of money, but it's not taking home $1 million a month. And I really like that she's kind of set herself that goal and the structure that she's put on it. So those are the main things that I took away from this conversation. I'd love to hear what you took away from it and if you enjoyed it. So do just hit me up on Instagram or on LinkedIn and let me know what you thought of this podcast. I'll see you next time.